Yo, Charlie here. Gonna jump on the bandwagon and do a little bit of a deck showcase. Not so much a deck tech, but rather just showing the deck that has given me some success on my favorite avatar as of right now, which is Pathfinder. Um, I've taken this list and it's been about the same between the first Crossroads at Gencon and then most recently SCG Baltimore. Some small iteration and changes between the two events, but generally the list has stayed about the same. So I will just kind of showcase the cards and just talk about Pathfinder as a whole. I know the deck techs that we have seen from people so far are from exceptionally good players and players that have actually won stuff. So this is more of just for people that maybe want to take a look into what has given me personal success with Pathfinder. Um, and I would say I've been successful on it. I haven't won anything. Like I haven't taken a first place or anything or a top four, but I went 5-2 at Gen Con, finished 14th, and then 5-2 at SCG Baltimore a weekend or two ago. Thinking finished 15th out of 127. So I think the deck's really good. I think the avatar is really good. I have thoughts on where it's poised to go to once Gothic comes out. Yeah, I'm just excited to see what that leads to, honestly, because we're going to get a whole bunch of new cards, a whole bunch of new sites. Pathfinder's going to get more consistent and can actually run mono element now once the new set comes out in a little less than a month, I think, at this point. So, yeah, it's an exciting time to play Pathfinder. So, yeah, this is a fire air list. It is somewhere between aggro, somewhere between mid range. It's not exactly either. Pathfinder, you really need to be adaptable and be ready to change your game plan on the fly. Obviously, based on threshold, based on the matchup. That goes for any deck, any avatar, really. But Pathfinder, even more so because you are not in control of the sites you pull. So I'm just going to sort of speed through the lower curve, the lower end of the curve here. Like I said, it's fire air. You're going to see all of these creatures. If you're playing fire of any kind, you're probably going to be face down with these creatures. I don't really have any cute or slick choices here for the minions when it comes to the choices I've made here, because these are just like straight up the best cards. So the only one I will talk about is Dapril. I wish I could fit in a more interesting choice than these. I've tried and iterated on Hounds of Ondaros and the East-West Dragon. I think those are just more fun. Honestly, I think everyone might agree with that, but Dapril is just so good. And in Pathfinder, it's just probably unequivocally the best choice because the one air threshold to cast it. East-West and Hounds of Ondaros are both 2 air, and their effects are much more interesting. They're more fun to play. But in a deck where you can't control your thresholds, this is the better choice. And also probably competitively speaking, Dapril is just really great because of the lifelink ability. So yeah, like I said, I play this more as an aggro, or sorry, more somewhere in between aggro and mid range. I'm fine using life as a resource to push the pedal down on the gas, and I'm also fine taking the time and playing it slow to clear the board and set myself up for a more advantageous state. Pathfinder is really, really good at the tempo in the first 5 to 7 turns of the match, and that's where you're going to be applying most of your pressure. And with that, I think a list like this that takes advantage of putting that pressure on in the right moments, trading away your enemy's minions at the right moment to clear the board to set you up for a future turn, is where Pathfinder shines. And I can talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Let me just show the auras and the trinkets. Jiha is a no-brainer. It's a low curve, low to the ground. Same thing with the Torch Hammer trinkets. Everyone knows how busted these are. Iron Shackles is actually like one of my favorite cards in this deck. It's not seen too much. At least I don't really see it played against me all that much. Even in online with the TTS leagues. This is shamelessly stolen from Accordion Man, and he took 7th place at Gencon with Pathfinder. He did a full-on aggro, so he had the Petrosian Cavalry, Rebex, every charge thing you can find that was in fire. He was playing it. And he had one of these in there, and I thought it was interesting, so I tested with it, and it's really, really good. Takes out Sierra Hydras, takes out Ascalon Phoenixes, and you could probably chalk it up to soft removal, but every time I've drawn it and used it, I've been happy. So after that, we'll go Magics, Rolling Blades. In a list like this, you can't remove this card. I tried to free up slots for other stuff, and I was just losing a lot. I put it back into the list at 11:30 at night, the night before the Crossroads at Baltimore, because I actually met Chris Bailey Boy in person for the first time. We sat right next to each other in the first round of the limited event on Friday. And he also took Whirling Blades out of his Pathfinder deck, and then his deck stunk. And I had the same issue. And he said that once I put him back in, the deck just was going back to doing what it does best, and it was working. So, yeah, thanks to him, I put that back in there. You could probably run 2. That's probably the right call, but I'm more of a vibes player and deck builder. I don't think I have the intellect to build a proper list, but I will adapt and iterate on that list that someone else made based on how I like to play. So 2 Whirling Blades is probably correct. I felt fine with 1. Same goes for Grapple Shot. It might be blasphemous to only use one of these, but once again, the way I used it was, removal. It was less Death's Door securing. It was more removal and like posturing to a better position after clearing out someone else's minion. Yeah, you could run 2 of these, and it's probably a much better choice, but I was fine with 1. I also kind of wanted to make room for some other stuff that I wanted to test with in person against, a pretty competitive field with more players. After that, 2 closer spells, a Cone of Flame, and a Major Explosion. Major Explosion, whenever I drew it, I felt great. I wasn't really too worried about getting to 7 mana. Cone of Flame, this, in some of my iterations, was a Flame Wave, the one that sweeps horizontally. I kind of just felt it would be easier to cast this based on the positioning and the grid, especially if I have my opponent down to a good amount of health, or down a good amount of health. By the time they get close to Death's Door, I probably felt better casting this than a Flame Wave was my guess at the time. This could get cut. At the very worst, it deals 5 or 4 damage to something. I mean, it could potentially kill on Death's Door. I think I was really, really worried about Earth and Root Spiders in general. I don't think I saw a single Root Spider in the entire tournament. So this is easily cuttable, I think. Root Spiders seems to be at an all-time low for appearing. But I still like it, and I pulled a foil card out of a pack, so that's why it's in there. 1 Disintegrates. There probably should be 2 in here. I actually don't know why there's not 2. This takes care of Phoenixes, takes care of Hydras. The immediate get the hell out of the game card. There probably should be 2 of these. So Poison Nova, great sweeper. 1 Fire Threshold makes it easy to cast, and Pathfinder being able to skirt around everywhere makes it also easy to cast. 2 Minor Explosions. This could be 2 Firebolts. I just like Minor Explosion more. Positionally, it's easier for me to cast this than a Firebolts on a Pathfinder. It's also pretty good as a clear against Bruin if they're on the same side as the Druid. But I also had the foils of these, so I chose to put those instead. 2 infiltrates. This is just a fantastic card. I'm happy keeping one of these in hand in the opening 3. Honestly, if I have one, I'm more than likely keeping it 9 times out of 10, unless I'm playing against Archie or another deck that I maybe have an intuition that it's going to be a slow match and I want to like try and burst them down. But yeah, 2 infiltrates gets rid of the Phoenix, gets rid of the scary stuff. It hit a questing beast in a pretty big match for me at Baltimore. But I'm also happy to just remove a creature and then have it do nothing. So the last couple spells are the magics here. 2 blinks. This could be 3. It could be 4. I cut 2 of them. I think I was at 4 before, but I cut 2 of them, and it's nice to have the card draw. But the reason I cut them was for 1 tactical move, which I believe was also a recommendation from Chris Bailey Boy. This card is very, very good. Same mana cost, same threshold. The fact that all of your units, your allied units, can take the steps up to two steps, which is huge. Realign yourself in a different section of the board, or posture onto one side of the board to open up a hole for Saracen Raiders somewhere, or just a sneaky backside play or something like that on a future turn. This card's really good. I'm absolutely moving up to, at the very minimum, 2 of these. If I stick with Fire Air, it's just really good, and every time I used it, it felt really good to use. So, and then the final 2 magics, 2 waypoint portals. This was my little cutesy, slick little tech that I put in for the tournament. I did test with it leading up to Baltimore, and I didn't really have good data, so I kind of wanted to do this just for my own sake to see how good it would be in person against some good competition, against good players, and just get some field data on how it would perform. And it did really well for me personally. I think I won 2 or 3 games off of playing this card. It's sneaky in a way. If you posture to one side of the board or one section and your opponent is scared normally of a grapple shot or a minor explosion, you can put a minion in an inconspicuous location and use a waypoint portal to get them there. I also put these in because I was really worried about a Gnome Hollows or sorry, not Gnome Hollows, Pebble Paths or Perilous Bridges, and this just completely circumvents that. And you could definitely slot in a teleport instead of these 2 to circumvent those 2 sites. But I like the, potentiality of having multiple minions on a site, and then they all get the benefit of Waypoint Portal. It's a cute card. It's slick. I think people have accurately assessed the power level of Waypoint Portal, but I also think it's under the radar just enough, at least with how I like to play Pathfinder, that it catches people off guard and they're not normally looking for it. And honestly, it's probably the correct choice not to play these over a grapple shot, an additional grapple shot, or an additional whirling blades, because those are definitely just straight up better. But like I said, I wanted to test these and get throw myself into the fire with them and see how they perform. And they came up almost every game. And like I said, 2 of the 3 games, or 2 or 3 games, I won off of this card here. So, yeah, that's pretty much the deck in terms of minions and magics and everything. As far as sites go, I'm not even going to get into the sites. Go on Curiosa, at least until Gothic comes out. Go into Curiosa, filter by site, air, and fire, and then put every single one into the deck until you hit 30. The only one I would make an exception for to not put in is a Smokestacks. That card has done more harm to me than it has to my opponent in a majority of my games, online, in person. I hate playing Smokestacks in Pathfinder. It's brutal. The only thing that comes close is a turn 1 tower and then having nothing to use it on, or having to blink in place if I have a blink in hand. So yeah, with that being said, that's the list. I think Pathfinder excels in a shell like this, where it's close to aggro, potentially close to mid-range, somewhere where it can take advantage of how much card advantage it has compared to your opponent in those first 6 or 7 turns of the game. Or the strongest strategy I've seen against Pathfinder, barring threshold issues and you're just getting beat down, which happened to me. I faced Julian at Baltimore in round 7. I think we were both 5-1, so it was whoever won was going into the top 8. And I couldn't have been happier that he made it in and then eventually won the whole thing. He's such an incredible person. He's so nice. But I had exactly that happen. Sight 1 was a fire sight. I looked down at my hand and I had multiple fire spells with 2 fire threshold. I said, all right, yeah, we're looking good. Sight 2 was air. Sight 3 was air. Sight 4 was air. Sight 5, I finally got the second fire threshold, and by that point, I was already down to like 4 or 5 health. I mean, Julian just capitalized on it, so that's why I say, barring threshold issues, Pathfinder is just so good at putting the pressure on and forcing the opponent's hand in wasting their card advantage, removing all your little guys that are punching into them one by one. When it comes to Gothic, I'm not sure where the deck will land. I'm not sure what the best archetype will be. I think the first and obvious choice for people to go to is going to be a mono fire Pathfinder, because there's a lot of really, really interesting minions that are coming into play once Gothic comes out. The Corruptor Freak, the Ifrit, Asmodeus looks insane. That card is insane. River of Blood to have the healing rounded down. That site is amazing as well. I'm not sure yet. I have my opinions, and I think depending on how ubiquitous Ward will be, that will make aggro weaker, obviously, because with the ebb and flow of how Pathfinder wants to play in those first 6 or 7 turns, and to be able to step on the gas compared to your opponent while they're down on card advantage because they had to waste all their cards removing stuff that you're playing, I think Ward might put just enough of a speed bump in front of an aggro list in Pathfinder that it eventually runs out of gas, which Pathfinder definitely does around like turn 8, 9, or 10, unless you draw into a Morgana, but it's unique and you can't rely on that, obviously. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Ward will be around in an amount that is enough to thwart an aggro list. I think Gothic will be, when things get settled down, I think it's going to be much slower. Ward will be the preliminary reason why. I just have this hunch it's going to be slower because I think people are going to be expecting aggro. So stuff like the Raiders, stuff like the Red Caps, people are going to be prepared for that, I think, because there's a lot of, at least in my opinion, there's a lot of talk about playing a mono fire Pathfinder in an aggro list like that. With that being said, I mean, even if you remove Pathfinder, mono fire Druid is on the radar now because of Julian. Like, he won his Cornerstone in New York because of it. And I'm not trying to say he's the only person playing the deck, but I think maybe he's the one that popularized it. So, and that deck is slightly faster than Pathfinder in those first 4 turns, but that's what I mean. If you can be patient and, you know, remove your opponent's stuff in a Monofire Druid, unless they draw into like a Pact with the Devil off of the Tawny sacrifice, then you're going to have much more cards in your hand than they do. The other thing with Ward is that I was thinking that if it ends up being slower of a format in terms of constructed, once things get settled down, that the site destruction list would be pretty decent. And it may still be, but like I said, it depends how ubiquitous Ward will be, because that will shut off the ability for you to destroy sites. So unless you also have some creatures that can connect and pop the ward before the you know, the explosion happens, then I don't know, it might be kind of tough. The tricky part is that I also don't think Pathfinder really wants to slow down themselves either. I know you can do some control-y type lists outside of site destruction. I don't know if that's where Pathfinder wants to be, because at that point, with the context that we have no idea what the new avatars are, if we just base off of what currently exists, if you go the long game with Pathfinder, why wouldn't you just play an Archimago and get a whole bunch of recursion, or play Sorcerer and then have two extra cards in your hand every turn? You know what I mean? So we have no idea. Those are just my thoughts and opinions. I think Pathfinder is poised to get stronger in general, because we're going to have more consistency, and we'll be able to run mono element sites and mono element shells, which is amazing. I just don't know if mono element is going to be the way Pathfinder wants to go. In my head, I still think fire air might be worth taking the risk still to play dual element. We'll see. Nobody knows. I just wanted to give my opinions as a Pathfinder player. Like I said, I am not the best. I am not the only one, but I am one of them. There are dozens of us. So yeah, hopefully you got something out of the video and you weren't too bored by, holy shit, a 24-minute, Jesus. It's felt like 5. But yeah, Pathfinder's awesome. It's a ton of fun. If at the very least with Gothic, it doesn't, I think it's very competitively viable now. I've had great success with it, 5-2 at both events. Chris Bailey, he went 5-2 at Baltimore. It can be successful. You're beholden to the threshold issues, which thankfully I don't run into very often. Other avatars just kind of have a leg up. Druid is good because Druid is good. Archimago is good because he's good. Sorcerer fits into his corner and does what he does really well. Pathfinder's kind of the same way as that, but sometimes you can just get unlucky. So we'll see what Gothic brings. I'm so pumped for the set. It's looking to be, in all honesty, probably one of the coolest TCG sets I've ever been a part of. So we'll see what happens. But if you got something useful out of this video, I'm happy. I'm going to try and do more stuff. Like I said, I wanted to jump on the bandwagon because everyone else seemed like they were having fun making content. And I've had this camera sitting around for a good while doing nothing. And what better way to put some mileage on it, if not with videos related to sorcery. So yeah, thank you for taking a look and have a good one. See ya.